It was a quiet Saturday morning when the rain started pouring. At first, it felt like just another storm, but soon, it became clear that this was no ordinary downpour. Streets began to flood, cars were stranded, and families found themselves trapped in their homes, watching helplessly as water slowly rose around them. In the midst of the chaos, fear and uncertainty filled the air. But sometimes, even in the darkest moments, the light of human kindness shines the brightest. One small town in the Midwest faced devastation like never before. And what happened next wasn't just about survival, it was about people opening their hearts to complete strangers, proving that kindness can move mountains, or in this case, floodwaters. Before we dive into this touching story, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Story Hub, hit that like button, and leave a comment below sharing your favorite act of kindness. Your support helps us share more stories that warm hearts and inspire change. Main story: in the town of Willow Creek, people had always known each other by name. It was the kind of place where neighbors borrowed sugar, children played freely on the streets, and community events brought everyone together. But nothing in its history had prepared the residents for the flooding that came that fateful weekend. The storm began late Friday night. Rain hammered the town with relentless force, and by dawn, the streets had transformed into rivers. Homes near the creek were swallowed by rising water, and families scrambled to move their belongings to higher ground. Among them was Sarah Thompson, a mother of 2 young children, who watched helplessly as the flood began seeping into her living room. With every passing minute, the fear of losing everything grew heavier in her chest. Meanwhile, across town, Mike Anderson, a retired firefighter, saw the news on TV and knew he couldn't just sit at home. Without a second thought, he grabbed his boat, a flashlight, and a first aid kit, and headed toward the neighborhoods most at risk. He wasn't alone for long. One by one, others joined him: teachers, shopkeepers, even teenagers with backpacks filled with sandwiches and bottled water. The spirit of helping had begun to ripple through Willow Creek. By midday, entire streets were underwater, and the community's true test had begun. Families trapped in their homes waved for help from second-story windows, and volunteers worked tirelessly to reach them. Among the rescuers were neighbors who had never met the families they saved, yet without hesitation, they pulled them to safety. One woman, Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly widow, was rescued by a group of local kids who refused to leave her side until she was safely in a nearby shelter. Her tearful smile and shaky voice as she thanked them left everyone around in awe. The shelters quickly became crowded, but the warmth of human kindness made up for the cold, damp surroundings. Local churches and community centers opened their doors, and volunteers cooked hot meals, donated blankets, and provided toys for children who had lost everything. Families who had homes unaffected by the flooding welcomed strangers into their living rooms, offering them warmth, comfort, and sometimes a shoulder to cry on. One story stood out above the rest. The Johnson family, who lived near the creek, had been separated when the water rose. Mr. Johnson was stranded on the roof with his teenage daughter, while Mrs. Johnson and their youngest child were stuck in the flooded basement. Panic threatened to take over, but then, a group of neighbors arrived, forming a human chain to reach the Johnsons. Each person handed the next a piece of the family, literally and figuratively, until everyone was safe. Seeing the family reunited in the pouring rain, hugging each other tightly, brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. It was a moment that would be remembered in Willow Creek for generations. Meanwhile, the kindness wasn't limited to those directly affected by the flood. Local business owners turned their shops into supply stations, giving away essentials free of charge. The high school football team used their trucks to deliver food and water to stranded families. Even strangers from nearby towns came to lend a hand, inspired by the story of Willow Creek's courage and generosity. The news spread quickly, and soon, the small town became a shining example of what happens when a community truly comes together. Among the volunteers was a young woman named Emily, who had moved to Willow Creek only 6 months earlier. She didn't know anyone well, but she was determined to help. Emily spent hours in the shelters, comforting frightened children, handing out blankets, and listening to stories from families who had lost everything. One little boy, no older than 7, clung to her hand, whispering, "Thank you for not leaving me." That simple phrase made Emily's heart swell, reminding her of why kindness matters more than anything else. As the floodwaters began to recede, the town faced the difficult task of rebuilding. Homes were damaged, businesses were affected, and the streets were littered with debris. But amidst the cleanup, an incredible thing happened. The people of Willow Creek didn't just rebuild their homes, they strengthened the bonds that held their community together. Volunteers continued to check on those in need, neighbors helped each other repair houses, and the local school organized fundraisers to support families who had lost everything. One particularly emotional moment came when the Thompson family, whose home had been severely damaged, returned to find that their neighbors had already started clearing the debris and putting their living room back in order. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. Chairs were set upright, rugs were rolled out, and even a small collection of toys for her children had been left on the couch. She turned to her neighbors, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "I don't know how to thank you enough." The neighbors simply smiled and said, "Just pay it forward someday. That's all we ask." By the end of that week, Willow Creek had not only survived the flood but had done so in a way that left a lasting mark on everyone involved. Stories of bravery, compassion, and generosity filled social media feeds, news reports, and conversations in households across the country. The town's actions reminded everyone that kindness isn't just a feeling, it's a force that can change lives, lift spirits, and even restore hope in the most challenging times. And then came the moment that truly melted hearts. The community organized a small celebration in the town square, inviting everyone who had helped or been helped. There were homemade banners with messages like "Thank you, heroes," and "Kindness wins." Children handed out flowers to volunteers, and laughter echoed through the air despite the recent hardship. As the sun set, Sarah Thompson, Emily, the Johnsons, and hundreds of others stood together, holding hands in a circle. They didn't need words to express their gratitude. The sight alone told the story of unity, love, and unshakable human spirit. One elderly man, Mr. Howard, who had seen floods in his youth, leaned on his cane and said, "I've never witnessed anything like this. The water took a lot from us, but it also reminded us what truly matters: each other." That sentiment resonated with everyone present. In a world often focused on chaos and division, Willow Creek had proven that even ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary acts through simple, heartfelt kindness. The story of Willow Creek didn't end with the flood. It continued to inspire neighboring towns and communities across the nation. People donated to local shelters, volunteered time, and even reached out to strangers to offer help. Small acts of kindness multiplied, creating a ripple effect far beyond what anyone in the town could have imagined. Conclusion/uplifting ending: what makes this story so powerful isn't just the flood or the destruction it caused, it's the way people came together when it mattered most. It's the simple gestures that make a lasting impact: a hand reaching out to someone in need, a warm meal shared with strangers, or the comforting words offered to a frightened child. Willow Creek showed the world that kindness is contagious, and it doesn't take much to make a difference. As the town rebuilt, the memory of those rainy, chaotic days remained, not as a tale of fear, but as a story of hope and human connection. Every rescued family, every volunteer, and every neighbor who lent a hand became part of a living testament to the power of compassion. And for anyone watching, it's a reminder that even small acts of kindness can create waves of change. So the next time you see someone in need, remember Willow Creek. Offer your help, give a smile, or share your time. Because kindness isn't just about helping in emergencies, it's about shaping a world where people lift each other up, where hearts are warmed, and where hope is never lost. In the end, the flood may have taken homes and belongings, but it left behind something far more valuable: a community bound together by love, courage, and kindness, a story that will melt hearts for generations to come.